Hello, I'm Seahorse.
And hello, I am Aardvark.
Yes. Today, we're going to give you a quick rundown of why Jar Jar Binks, aka Darth Jar, is in fact a Sith and orchestrated the Clone Wars and is the main source of evil in Star Wars. Um, so, as you've probably all read, there's a Reddit article recently released that claimed that Jar Jar is an oaf who's disguising his true powers. Um, so we're just going to quickly summarize that and then talk about The Force Awakens, the newest movie in the Star Wars trilogy.
There may be spoilers, but
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah. So here we go.
So recently we have been studying Jar Jar in the Battle of Naboo, where the Gungan army fights the droids. But there's also a fighting style called Z-Quan, or Drunken Fist, where the user uses body momentum to fool his opponent into acting like an oaf, as Jar Jar has done the entire series. But we've seen him doing other moves in Z-Quan, such as balancing himself before he jumps into the lake, or whatever, to show Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan where the Gungan city is, or when he was using his body momentum to throw droids around, causing chain reactions to win the battle.
And as we know, George Lucas often borrows different influences from martial arts, like Asian fighting styles, because Darth Vader's helmet is based off a samurai helmet. So it makes sense that he uses just a very nuanced version of Z-Quan in Jar Jar. So another good point from the Reddit article is that in one scene, Jar Jar falls off a balcony, but when the camera pans down, he ends up on the left side instead of the right side. And most people, to do that is impossible without use of the Force, because you'd have to force jump from one side to the other.
And we've seen that in the other movies, such as Luke with Jabba the Hutt.
So most people attributed this to just a continuity error or like a frame mistake. But if you notice in the scene, there's a droid who was looking at the original spot that Jar Jar would have landed
and shooting at it.
And shooting. And then as the camera moves back, the droid looks over, surprised that Jar Jar seemingly teleported to this other area. So it wasn't a mistake. It was a very intentional, subtle piece of evidence.
Secretly brilliant.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
So you want to do the
Jar Jar as Jedi? They sometimes use mind tricks with sleight of hand movements, such as Obi-Wan used it, and how Qui-Gon tried to use it on Watto in the Phantom Menace. In key plot points, such as when Jar Jar has been promoted to general, to senator, he's been seen using the sleight of hand movements. And when he is persuading an entire galactic senate to give Emperor Palpatine emergency powers, which eventually led to the Empire.
Yeah, most people thought that Palpatine was using Jar Jar as a political tool to grant him emergency powers because he represented Naboo in the Galactic Senate.
Or did he?
But as we know, or as we think, Jar Jar, when he was waving his hands in front of the Senate, was actually, like Aardvark said, was controlling the minds of the entire Galactic Senate, including Emperor Palpatine. And that the granting of the emergency powers is what allowed the Emperor to declare war, and was the first step in his master plan to combat the Republic and the Resistance.
Excellent point, Seahorse.
Moving on. Oh, just a quick another point that kind of tangents off of that. So Jar Jar and Palpatine were both born and raised on Naboo. So it's likely that they grew up together and were co-conspirators in their plot to destroy the galaxy.
Also, as we know, Yoda, before he revealed that he was, in fact, the Jedi Master, also acted like an oaf in front of Luke, batting R2 on the head, wanting to steal his whatever type of food he had, but then revealed himself to be the Jedi Master. Also, there is one oaf in the Clone Wars who seemingly acts like an oaf, and who everyone finds annoying and sometimes a little bit aggravating at times. But George Lucas said himself in an interview wanted to mirror the Clone Wars in the original trilogy. So,
yeah, that's definitely one parallel. And also, George Lucas said in an interview that the oaf, or that like disguises himself, is a common type of archetype found in like mythological folklore. So, we all know that he uses a lot of myths and like old legends in his script. So it makes sense that he continue that pattern. Okay, so that was the summary of the Reddit article.
now we are moving on to the Force Awakens points.
Yeah. So.
Spoilers.
So yeah, go ahead with the first point, Aardvark.
Thank you, Seahorse. So, Snoke, Supreme Leader Snoke, when we see him in the film, he is only portrayed as a hologram in that dark, scary room. But we do not know his actual location or his actual, like,
identity.
Form. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Seahorse.
Welcome.
Yeah, and also, if you look closely, excuse me, he has the similar traits as most people think as a stereotypical Sith, like with the scars across his face, the pale skin, the broad structure, and the deep menacing voice. But Jar Jar was only making those traits or physical features to fool all the people of the First Order into thinking him as like a powerful, scary-looking, stereotypical Sith. So he's just hiding his true identity, even from Kylo Ren.
All of his traits are too cliche to actually be true. So it makes sense that this is someone's version, like interpretation of a Sith. It's too good to be true. It's trying too hard. So that's another piece of evidence. Also, another good point that Aardvark found over here is that Vader means father in Dutch.
And it's one of the biggest plot twists in history when Snoke in Dutch means pike. And I think we all know that one character in the Clone Wars has the facial structures of a pike.
And that is Jar Jar. So the theory is that Snoke, who's actually Jar Jar, contains the hidden meaning pike, or the fish, which we think inspired Jar Jar's facial structure and the design of his whole character.
Also, we're going to throw another thing out here. The people who think that Snoke is Darth Plagueis, we think you're right. Because we think, in fact, that Darth Plagueis is Jar Jar Binks. And Jar Jar Binks is Darth Plagueis. Why don't you tell them about that, Seahorse?
I'd love to. So, our theory, brand new theory here, I haven't read it anywhere, is that Plagueis, as we know, has the power to manipulate the Force to bring life and to resurrect. So he has gained like a true mastery on the other side. So we think that when Palpatine killed Plagueis, Plagueis just was waiting for the right time to come back. So he reincarnated himself as Jar Jar, who is an oaf, to disguise his true identity and to gain knowledge of the Jedis by like almost acting as a spy on the opposite side.
He always is in pursuit to gain knowledge. That's
Yeah.
why they call him Darth Plagueis the Wise, because he's gained so much knowledge from that never-ending curiosity.
So if once he gained this knowledge, he'd have a balanced understanding of the Force and could use the light side, so to speak, against his enemies once he revealed himself. And with the mastery of that side, they would have no advantage over him.
Yeah, and it would also bring forth a new connection to the dark side, because you cannot have light without dark or dark without light. So why not just master both?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the final point we have here, it's a bit of a stretch, but it doesn't make any sense why the franchise and the writers would omit Jar Jar, because as we all know, he was a beloved comedic relief character from this second trilogy. So they would lose money and interest and viewers by not having Jar Jar in the newest movie. So my theory is that the only reason they would take him out is because they were waiting to reveal his true identity later on in the film. Otherwise, there'd be no reason not to have the Jar Jar that everyone loves.
Well, thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe. We're currently working on making our website, but you'll just have to wait and see for our next video. This is
Seahorse and Aardvark.
signing off.
Thank you very much.